Hi, everyone. Hi. It's really nice to be here. It's been a long time. I didn't get here last year. I had something done with my ankle, so that took a while to get beyond. So it's really nice to be here to see all of you beautiful people. Thank you for your presentation on the inundation, and I'm going to share my part of it now, and some of it will actually overlay what you actually said too. Oops, sorry. The ancient Egyptians, they had 3 seasons. And the season, which starts, and actually started around the time that Sirius would shine its light upon the earth plane, was called Aket. And Aket is the time, it's the springtime. It's that time of inundation. The other 2 seasons, because they don't really have a winter season there, is the Peret, which would be the harvest time. Would be the time of the sowing, the growing, the time that our plants grow well. And the last one is called Shamu. And Shamu is then that time where we are actually harvesting and we are able to feast and enjoy the different products that were given to us. Egypt, up until 1970, would have an inundation. The Nile would be inundated yearly. And with that inundation came that fertilization of the banks. This fertilization came, they really didn't know exactly when it was going to be happening, because you never know, depending on what the weather pattern is, so you never know exactly when it might happen. So it could happen actually anytime between May and September. So the way that the ancient ones were able to see when this would occur would be when the star Sirius would shine its light down upon the planet. So in the Egyptian temples, almost everyone has something where they can recognize Sirius, that Sirius is coming. Such, for instance, in the temple of Dendera, Isis and Hathor temple, there is a statue of Isis, and it's down a road area where there are many pillars, and at the end there's her statue. And the priests and the priestesses at the time, what they would do is they would put a gem in her forehead. There was a spot where they could put the gem. And when they saw that this gem was lighting up, it would light up the whole hallway, that's when they knew that it was springtime. Springtime was coming. But yet with that, not necessarily did the inundation come, because that, as I said, depended on the weather pattern. And the Nile River is formed from many, many tributaries. You know, if you look at the map, we always think of Upper Egypt and Lower Egypt. But when you look at the map, Lower Egypt is actually where the Mediterranean is at. That's where Lower Egypt is. And then you go on down, and then it's Upper Egypt, so it's actually, it looks like it's in the north, but it's not. It's just the opposite of what we think, because it's in the southern hemisphere. So these rivers, these tributaries, the main tributaries, they came from Lake Victoria, which is the largest river, the largest lake, actually, in Africa, and also Lake Albert. And that's also in the Uganda area. And so they come together. And what brings that water down is actually the mountainous areas of the Congo and, as I said, Uganda, Tanzania. And so the mountains, when they're snow-covered, the snow starts melting. And it's like they start having what looks like monsoon rains, but they're not the rains. They're just the rivers flowing from the highest points, actually, in Africa. And those aren't the only tributaries, but those are the largest ones. And there are other rivers that also flow in to that, to what's then becomes the Nile. But before it actually becomes what's only called the Nile, there are two other rivers. There's the Blue Nile, and then there's the White Nile. And I always find that quite interesting because we talk about Upper and Lower Egypt. And so Upper Egypt, tributaries, the energies coming from the higher realms. And so the tributaries of light coming from the higher realms. The Blue River, I always associate with indigo, the indigo energies. And of course, how many of those children do we have now on the planet? And the white is the crystal energies. So I find that quite interesting how these two then merge together from the tributaries even higher up, and they blend together, and then they flow into the Nile, and the Nile has many, many different names. The Nile is sometimes it's called, actually they say it was formed by the tears of Isis. And so the story of Isis and Osiris can be very much associated with the inundation of the Nile. But I'm not going to go that direction tonight. But that's one of the stories that goes along with it. But the other thing, it's called the Celestial Nile, sometimes it's called. It's called the Sirius because it shines its light on it. It's also called, for instance, the Star of Isis, because Isis is so much associated with the Nile, again, because of the whole inundation. And I'm saying a little bit about this, but the thing is that the reason why Osiris and Isis are so much associated with the Nile River is because it is new beginning. It's rebirth. It's our springtime. It's when things start to come and blossom and bloom. And so they then are the representative of that part of the Nile River. So Isis herself is actually associated with the star Sirius. And Sothis and Isis, Sothis is actually the goddess on Sirius, and they intertwine those names. There are other different names that go with it, depending on whether it's Greek or so on. But there are many, many references to Isis and the star. The star Sirius, which shines down and is the indicator that spring is coming, is quite interesting also because it's part of the planet. The Sirius is part of the Dracos planet, and also Orion. So it's Orion and Dracos, but Canis Major, Dracos Canis Major, and it's a blue star. So they associate with a dog, actually, which is sort of interesting, and it's considered to be the bridge between heaven and earth, if you go back far enough into the thinking, and the time of the pharaohs. Because in the ancient times, there was a much different meaning. Yes, the Nile is totally important on the outer surfaces for the people because it fed the lands. It brought down that soil, that rich soil, for those banks to be overflown, and then they can do their planting. Well, since 1970, that's not occurring anymore. So now what they have to do on the outers, they really have to fertilize their lands now, just like we fertilize our lands here, so that we can grow our planets. So nowadays we have to search a little bit more for that spiritual connection that they had, because it was automatic. And they prayed to, as Claudia said, to Hapi. Hapi, he's the god that sits underneath the river banks and the soil of the river and the abyss of the river. And he's the one that when it's time for inundation, he comes out and he's the one that directs it. So, but nowadays what they do is they celebrate this festival of inundation of the Nile in August 15 actually, and it's a 2-week-long festival that they have for this time of inundation, this time of the coming of spring. And the name for that is Wafa El Nil. And that's what it's called in the celebration nowadays. Also during that time, the Coptics celebrate. The celebrate that same time frame for those 2 weeks. And the name of that particular festival is Esba El Shahid. And what that actually means is the martyr's finger. Because what the Coptic church does is they'll take a relic, a piece of relic of one of the martyrs, and they toss it into the river as a gift, actually, to the river. And the belief is that relics are actually ones that have the energy to bring forth certain energy vibrations. For instance, in the Coptic churches, there, in their altars, and as there are in the Catholic churches in their altars, there are relics stored, relics of the martyrs. And so what you can do is you can go to those churches, and when you're praying to these bones of the martyrs. So this is the way that they connect with this energy, but they know that water is so important. What is water? When we drink it, water is for us to sustain life, right? Water cleanses us. Water cleanses our emotions. You know, you go into the river or to the water, into the streams, and the water will cleanse those emotions. Flowing with the river, you know, you want to have an easier life. That expression, flow with the river and understand. Because as you flow with the river, you start to recognize and are able to start tuning in to what there is beyond what looks like the physical. Now, moving further back into the ancient days, that festival is actually called Akhet. And Akhet, as I mentioned before, means springtime. It means the inundation. And Akhet, she was actually the one of the consorts of Khnum Ra. And Khnum, he was the god of the Elephantine Island. I don't know how many of you were at Elephantine Island when you visited Egypt, but he's the god that is at the first cataract of the Nile. And the cataracts of the Nile, those are measured by the millimeters, and they could tell by how high up the water was at that first the millimeters would register how high up the water was at that first cataract, and then they could tell how much water was actually, or what kind of a flooding there was going to be, so that this fertilization could take place. Now, moving into the spiritual fertilization, that moves us more into the times of the ancient Egyptians. The ancient Egyptians and their teachings in the mystery school saw this really differently. Egypt is very much a land of symbology. As I said before, we talk about Upper Egypt and Lower Egypt. It is a reflection of the heavens. It's a reflection of us. Every single temple along the Nile actually has our chart. For instance, Luxor, and I can't really remember his name. He was a theosophist, and he went to Egypt years and years ago, and he studied it for 15 years. Lubitz was the last part of his name. I can't remember the first part. And he studied the temple of Luxor, and he found that it was the temple of man. In other words, proportionately, when he measured, and you measure, because we really have the same kind of measurements. We might be taller, we might be shorter, but we have the same measurements basically from our feet to our knees, proportion-wise. And he found, after 15 years of study, that it was the exact proportions to man. So he called that, one of his books is called The Temple of Man. But not only that temple is the temple of man, but every other temple is the temple of man. That layout is there somewhere. We find it in our churches, actually, in our modern day churches with the vestibules and the different parts of the church. So it starts with our feet and it goes all the way to our head. So we are the reflection of the stars. And what the composition within us, the soul composition within us, is holy. It is of higher consciousness. And if we are living of higher consciousness, that is when we can reach that bridge which takes us from the earthly realm into the heavenly realm. And that's, again, what Sirius represents. It's that stepping stone, it's that bridge to higher consciousness. And if we pass physically and we go over that bridge and we're not really quite high enough in the the awareness and the consciousness level, that's when we get sent back to live life again. But all that means is that we're still learning different vibratory frequencies upon the planet, because that's really what we're here for, is to learn different vibratory frequencies. We're all masters already. That's all there is to it. We're already masters. Christ, Jesus Christ, he is the ascended master. The reason why he's the ascended master is because he was able to understand and to work with every single vibratory frequency upon the planet. And so if we want to get to that Christ level, he's our example. He's our way shore. And so we come back and we work with energy vibrations, and some of it's not so great. Some of it hurts, some of it hurts the knee and it hurts, it might be the heart or whatever. But the thing is that what you're learning is to master vibratory frequency with that. And so in the ancient mystery schools and the teachings that the priest King Thoth brought from Atlantis and also Lemuria, it was brought to Egypt, because Egypt was very much a balanced country at that time on the outer. So symbolically, the teachings were brought to a place that was able to now bring them forth into the world. So we then, that reflection of the sun or the stars or Sothis, we are these holy beings of light. And within us is this chakra system. But the chakra system in the Nile represents the chakra. It's the Jed. It's called the Jed. And the waters are actually the fluid. It's our fluid, the fluid that goes up and down our spinal column. Along the river Nile are the many temples. Those represent our chakra systems. And the chakra systems, there's not only, we speak about 7 chakras, and that's how we've been brought up. But then you have to start splitting that apart. There are the masculine chakras and the feminine chakras. So one of the sides of the Nile represents the feminine chakras, and that would be your West Bank. The West Bank is all the inner. It's all the moon side. So that's where we go when we go to meditate. We meditate when we go into the darkness, because it's through the darkness that we see the light. The East Bank is all the creative part of us. It's the masculine part of us. The sun rises in the east, and it then sets in the west. Life, death, resurrection. That's the whole message. And that message is what you're going to have, an ascension, of course. But that's the main message you will get in all of the studies of the Nile. That's what it's all about. It's all about life, death, and rebirth. The inundation is the rebirth. And this is something that can happen to us every single day, really every minute of the day, because you go down to the cellular structure of our being, and it's constantly, the cells die, and they're reborn again. They die, they're reborn. We go to sleep at night, we go into that meditative state, we go into the darkness, we go into a dream state. If we go in there with the right intention, we can wake up with new thought, with higher awareness, and then we start our day. We start creating the next day. So every single day is that we can do this. Our seasons are the same thing. We can see that happening through the seasons of the year, where there is that time for birth, the time for growth, the time for harvest, and time for the death. So the only reason why Egypt doesn't have those 3 of the 4 seasons is because of they don't have a winter. So now take a look at Egypt and see Egypt as being you. And within you, there is the upper self and what we consider the lower self. They're not. They're both sacred. They're both holy, but they represent different things. That lower self connects us to the earth plane. The upper self connects us to the heavens. But the goal is that we connect upper and lower Egypt within us. And that inundation is a way to do that. And it's a reminder every year over there. It's a celebration. It's a celebration of new beginning, of new creation. And we can do this every time we go into meditation. We can do that every time we go to sleep at night, when we go into the darkness, or we meditate just before we go to sleep at night, which we recommend. If you don't meditate any other time, do that, and do it as you're waking up, so that you're always connected. Because then what you're starting to do is you're allowing these tributaries of light, love, peace, joy, goodness, strength, honor, glory, all that is divine, to start seeping in through the crown chakra, which is represented by Abu Simbel. And interestingly enough, Abu Simbel is in Nubia, so it really moves out of Egypt, or at least in the ancient times. So interesting enough, yes, so here we are, it's the body of man, but Abu Simbel reaches into higher consciousness, into higher levels of awareness. And so allow those energies to start flowing in from the higher realms. And as they come in, they start washing over your chakras. Inundation, the outer inundation is taking care of the outer temples. The inner inundation is taking care of the inner chakras. We are in itself, of course, a pyramid of light, but we also within us have these chakras. And we don't just have 7 chakras, we have 7 masculine, 7 feminine, and then we have the secondary chakras. So, then it goes up to 12 chakras, and really 24, because there's the masculine, feminine aspect of that. And then not just that, then there are the sub-chakras, because as the energy moves from the main chakras, it goes out, and sub-chakras are where then you start with like the meridian points. And then if you look at a picture on the wall, if you've ever done this at the physician's office, and you see the whole nervous system, that's a good example of what the chakra system can be. Because that shows all of our chakras that are up and down our spinal column. It shows the chakras that are away from us then, which are the sub-chakras, and then all these branches that flow from each one of these sub-chakras. So, as my husband mentioned, which is really true, and I do believe it looks like that, is we are this tree of life. If you stop and look at all that, the energy that's going downward. So when we're receiving this energy from the higher realms, it's actually like an upside down tree of life. It's coming in and it spreads out. But as we start opening our chakras, and we start pushing through what we call the lower chakras, which are I'm going to say in a sense, well, I say they're the more challenging, but they don't necessarily have to be. But how much are we stuck in our solar plexus area sometimes, or in the abdominal chakra area, or the base chakra? And the people I work with, boy, there's so many that, because they focused on being spiritual, they're like this. And we allow these energies to come in, but then we stop. And for some reason, we're not bringing them down. Many, many people that are in this field of study, and it's because we've been told that we're not so great. So we look at what's up here, but we don't really want to take a look at what's down here. But these are our lessons. This is the part of us that is our lessons. That's how we grow. That's how we become. So the important thing is when this inundation occurs, this spiritual fertilization starts occurring, to start allowing yourself to open up and see it going through all of the energy centers. And then going down not only to the base chakra, but then down to your knee chakras and your ankle chakras, your feet chakras, and then allowing that energy to move all the way down and anchoring itself into the center of the planet. And then, Mother Earth, she loves us. She loves us dearly. So what does she want to do? The Divine Mother, the sacred planet, Gaia, is so thankful that you're sharing this gift with her, these gifts of light with her, that she then will give her energies to you and allow those energies to start moving through the bottoms of your feet, the energy of the sacredness of planet Earth, and it brings it up and it fans out also. So this tree, this upside down tree comes down and we're bringing it now up, and this tree of life coming from our grounding to the planet goes on up, and there are now two trees of life interfolded with one another. And that's when you start to live heaven on earth. And that is what the Nile inundation is really all about. That's what spiritual fertilization is all about. And it begins with that time within us where there's the new beginning. What is that song? I don't know. It was so long ago. Morning has broken like a new morning. So those are the words. Every morning is a new day. Every morning we can start creating. We can bring forth that oneness, that togetherness of the divine heavens and the divine earths. And then as we do that, we start to realize how we're just not alone. We're not this little dot anymore. We have got so many divine ones that are working with us. You are stretched out in every direction. You can't even see how far out because of the many masters that are working with you, the angelics, the guides, your loved ones. You talked about Hamid. He's one of my guides too. He works with me all the time. So all these beings of light are with you. But the thing of it is they're all part of you. They're not even out here. They're all in here. So when you go to call on an angel, know it's already within you. That's why it's so important to go within. That's why meditation is so important, is to go within and connect. Because we are not used to looking at it all being around us already. We haven't been taught that way. So you are all beautiful beings of light. The story I told about inundation is one of the stories. There are many around it, and many different feasts that actually go on during this 2 weeks period. But to me, this is so important for us to realize that we are always connected, and we can have that fertilization of the Nile inundation, the spiritual inundation, every day, every moment of our day. Thank you. So now I'm going to go ahead and I am going to take you through meditation. Okay? So close your eyes and allow yourself to become still and to be at peace. To be at peace. As you take a deep breath, surround yourself with divine radiant light and love. And know that within this divine circle, this bubble, this protective light, only that which is of the highest essence can come to you, leave from you, and also dwell within you. See yourself now the higher realms of the Nile, Upper Egypt, at the first cataract of the Nile. You're standing there gazing about, enjoying the water, but pondering, when will the river rise? It is time. It is time. And the rivers high above, coming from higher realms, all the way to the divine creator, to source. And from the place of source, tributaries of light begin to flow. The reds, the greens, the orange, the indigos, the violets, all of these tributaries of light energy, of love and peace and joy energy. They come flowing down, for you have prepared yourself. You're anticipating a spiritual inundation of light. And so, see the top of your head, the temple of Abu Simbel, there accepting this divine energies. They're filtering in through your crown chakra, and they radiate every direction, to the right, to the left, to the back, to the front. These energies fill every nook and cranny of your being. And as it does so, find how your energy center, that crown chakra, opens even wider. And this energy flows on down, and meets the third eye area, the beginning of thought, the beginning of creation. And with these energies, these new vibrant energies of light and love, joy, wisdom, and understanding, you come to create. You find yourself in your mind's eye as Khnum, the water barrier, the potter, creating what it is that you desire. And once you have this intention of creation, the energies flow on further down. They flow on down, and then they fill the temple of love, touching your heart center. Isis, the mother of love, is there with you, blessing you, bestowing her gifts upon you. The energies are flowing on the east side of your chakra system, touching the many temples along the way. Dendera, the temple of love and joy and music, Dendera, the temple of Hathor, the grandmother of light, of the divine feminine energies. And the energies flow even further down and wash. They wash over Luxor, the temple of man. And your energies, the creation that you have made before your very eyes, flows on down to Lower Egypt. And it merges. It merges with the Nile Delta, which opens itself up. It opens itself up to creation upon the planet. And the waters of the planet, they begin to be filled with your new creation. For everything that you create, you not only create for self, but you create it for everyone else upon the planet. So see this water that is leaving the Nile, moving in to the seas, moving around the planet Earth, infiltrating every aspect of that which is of the earth. And in this manner, you create, you ground the energies so that which you have chosen to create can manifest before your eyes. And it is a gift to the planet. And as these waters surround the planet Earth, they return back to the Nile and take you into that space, the moon side of the Nile, the introspection. And the waters, they flow over the pyramids of initiation, Giza, Saqqara, and the many temples, until they move on, moving now upward, in thought, in the darkness, collecting, recognizing the higher essences of who it is that you are, until again it reaches the upper part of the Nile. And there it waits. It waits until the inundation occurs again. You are the creator. You are the receptor of the higher energies, the energies of heaven. You are the creator. You keep your feet on the ground, sharing those gifts that you received in the darkness, coming to know that there is more and more. And as you continue this journey, see your divine essence as it spirals ever upward. Each time, gaining more wisdom, gaining more understanding, connecting with the highest, sharing with the planet. And each time this occurs, this circle becomes wider and wider and wider and wider. And within you, remembrance occurs of who it is that you truly are. You become the fully realized self, the Sahu, the fully realized self. For you are divine. You are divine essence. And you share this essence with our Divine Mother Gaia. Heaven and earth have joined together within you. The infinity signs circles you for you're in perfect balance of the divine heavens and the sacred earth. And take a moment and see yourself having all of yourself together, being that divine one, walking the steps as that divine one. You can move mountains. You can control rivers. You can touch other souls, allowing them to recognize and remember who it is they too are. You're a divine light, living on Mother Earth, on Gaia. And with the assistance that you are giving the planet, you not only are uplifted in awareness and consciousness, but so is everyone upon the planet. And oh, how beautiful it is to feel these energies of your creation. You are love, you are light, you are joy, you are blessed. Know this as you gently bring your awareness back to the here and the now, and allow yourself to go forth out into the world. And so it is. So it is. So it is.